Ferrari came to Spa with hope packed into every carbon fiber of their upgraded SF5. The new suspension system was touted as the breakthrough they desperately needed. But Friday's qualifying told a much different story. Instead of celebrating progress, the headlines were stolen by a moment of heartbreak. Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, suffered a dramatic spin at the final chicane, just as the checkered flag waved. The result? He was left stranded near the back of the grid, an unthinkable outcome for the Ferrari veteran. All eyes had been on Ferrari's upgrade package, and expectations were sky high. But when Hamilton emerged from the cockpit after SQ1, frustration was written all over his face. When asked whether the new suspension had made the car easier to control, he simply shook his head. There was no sugarcoating it. "I spun," he said, bluntly. Pressed further about rear locking possibly causing the incident, he added, "Yeah, first time in my career, the spin couldn't have come at a worse moment." Under pressure after a shaky first lap in SQ1, Hamilton was banking everything on one last clean flyer. Instead, he lost the rear end at the bus stop chicane, ending his hopes of a strong qualifying with a cloud of tire smoke. "Tomorrow's a new day," he said, clearly trying to stay composed. "But I'm massively frustrated. A lot of people put in hard work behind the scenes, and to end up here, it's not where we should be." The numbers told the rest of the story. P8, his lowest sprint start since Austria 2 years ago. Only Alpine newcomer Franco Colapinto and Mercedes protege Enrico Antonelli clocked slower times. In that first session, ironically, Antonelli had a similar fate, losing control and skidding through the Stavella gravel on his opening lap. Hamilton narrowly avoided the same gravel trap early in his run, but the final spin just meters from finishing meant he couldn't properly evaluate or benefit from the much-anticipated rear suspension upgrade. For Ferrari, this wasn't the showcase they had envisioned, and for Hamilton, the weekend had already started on the back foot. Ferrari had placed all their faith in this upgrade, believing that lowering the ride height and stabilizing the rear end would finally unlock the SF25's hidden potential, and for a brief moment, it looked like it might work. Hamilton was on a clean lap, gaining time through Sector 2 and edging 0.155 seconds ahead of Alex Albon's benchmark. But then, catastrophe struck under braking. Just as he approached the final sector, the car twitched violently, spinning out and bringing an abrupt end to what could have been a solid SQ1 recovery. But was it truly driver error? Sky Sports F1 analyst Anthony Davidson wasn't convinced. He immediately picked up on something deeper. "That sound, you hear it?" he pointed out during the replays. "A lot of rear axle locking. That clunking. That's backlash in the gearbox." Davidson suspected a mechanical failure during downshifting and firmly came to Hamilton's defense. "I don't blame the driver in that moment. There's something wrong with the car. I give Lewis the benefit of the doubt." Veteran commentator Martin Brundle agreed. For him, the spin wasn't just uncharacteristic, it was alarming. His rear axle broke under braking, Brundle said. "Highly unusual. I don't think there's anyone more shocked by that than Hamilton himself." The frustration was only compounded by what happened earlier in the session. On his very first flyer, Hamilton experienced a sudden snap of oversteer through Stavella. Some insiders believe a rogue gust of wind may have thrown the car off balance. Had he held that lap together, he might have already been safe in SQ2 even with a later spin at the chicane. Instead, the 7-time champion now finds himself in an all-too-familiar situation, stuck at the back with everything to do. Saturday's sprint offers just 1 point for P8, and Hamilton will have to fight tooth and nail through traffic just to get in contention. A weekend that began with so much promise for Ferrari now feels like it's teetering on the edge. The upgrades may have added speed, but they've brought chaos with them too. Ironically, the sprint format has been one of the rare bright spots in Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari chapter so far. Since making his stunning switch from Mercedes to the Scuderia for the 2025 season, Hamilton has struggled to find consistency, but in short-form racing, he's delivered glimpses of the magic. Take Shanghai, for example. He stormed a victory from pole position in the sprint, marking his only pole and win in red so far. Miami told a similar story of smart decision-making and sharp instincts. He timed a switch to slicks perfectly after an early rain shower, grabbing a well-earned P3. To podiums and sprint races have offered hope that Hamilton and Ferrari can still click when the conditions are just right. But while Hamilton finds himself deep in the pack this weekend, things look brighter, at least on paper, for his teammate Charles Leclerc. The Monegasque managed to secure a spot on the second row for Saturday's sprint at Spa-Francorchamps, a result that might seem promising, but behind the helmet, his emotions told a different story. A 0.768-second gap to pole sitter Oscar Piastri left Leclerc feeling conflicted. The feeling was pretty good, which is exactly why it's mixed. He admitted, the car felt better, but we're still 7/10 off. That's a huge margin, even on a long track like this. He wasn't sugarcoating anything. We just need more grip. I don't think we're doing anything drastically wrong. But the grip simply isn't there. Leclerc acknowledged that. The upgrades Ferrari brought to Spa, especially the rear suspension, had made a noticeable difference. The car felt more stable, more responsive. But the reality of McLaren's blistering pace was hard to ignore. I could feel the step forward, he said after the session. But the McLarens, they've taken an even bigger step. It's disappointing. What we wanted from the upgrade, we got. But now we're just trying to figure out how they managed to stretch the gap even further. Lining up fourth on the grid for the sprint, Leclerc knows he's in striking distance, but it's not just about positions anymore. It's about answers. With Hamilton languishing in 18th and the team rolling out one of its most ambitious upgrades yet, this weekend is becoming a pivotal test of whether Ferrari's development path is finally moving in the right direction or if they're still chasing shadows. Ferrari's bold rear suspension upgrade at Spa wasn't just about marginal gains. It represented a fundamental shift in philosophy. By relocating the front wishbone's mounting point to the gearbox, the team aimed to lower the SF25's ride height and tame the unpredictable rear end that has haunted them all season. Subtle tweaks to the dampers were also likely part of the overhaul, as engineers tried to wring every last drop of performance from the package. But as Charles Leclerc revealed, hardware changes alone can't fix everything. The raw speed is there somewhere, but finding it often demands compromises. If I need confidence, I can get it by setting up the car differently, he admitted. But I usually prefer chasing pure performance over comfort. That choice doesn't always work out. Just look at Silverstone. My setup was so aggressive, it backfired in the wet. His comments paint a picture of a driver locked in a constant balancing act between confidence and competitiveness, between safety and speed. The new suspension may offer stability on paper, but extracting the maximum still requires extreme setups, and with those setups comes risk, especially in unpredictable conditions like Spa. I don't think this upgrade will eliminate the need for those risks, he continued. We'll still need to set up the car in a pretty aggressive way if we want to extract everything. But I'm okay with that. That's the path we've chosen. As Ferrari finds itself split between promise and pressure, Spa-Sprint becomes a proving ground not just for the upgrades, but for the team's entire direction. Hamilton is buried at the back, searching for answers after a costly spin. Leclerc stands nearer the front, battling doubt even with progress underfoot. This weekend was supposed to be Ferrari's turning point, whether it becomes a step forward or another frustrating footnote will depend on what happens when the lights go out. The lights at Spa-Francorchamps are always more than just a signal to go there, a test of reaction, precision, and nerve. For Ferrari, this sprint could either salvage a weekend spiraling out of control or push them deeper into doubt. As the grid forms, Hamilton sits far back in P18. The camera catches him inside the cockpit, visor down, hands tight on the wheel. There's no radio chatter now, just silence and focus. He knows what's ahead. 11 laps to fight through the midfield chaos. 11 laps to prove that Ferrari's upgrades aren't just numbers on a data sheet. The question is, will the SF25 hold together when pushed to the limit?